Puissance is another word for influence. Influence refers to the ability to affect or change someone's thoughts, actions, or decisions, often through persuasion, reputation, or subtle means. My older sister's influence on my decisions is undeniable. Puissance refers to power, might, or force, often with a poetic or formal tone. The king's puissance was evident as his banners flew over every conquered city. Both words describe the capacity to shape outcomes or affect people, each representing a different expression of power. Influence is power through persuasion, while puissance is power through force. The influence of the leader grew over time. The judge wielded her puissance by declaring the defendant guilty.
Cachinnate is another word for laugh. To laugh means to make sounds and facial expressions in response to something funny or amusing. I couldn't help but laugh at the joke. To cachinnate means to laugh loudly and often in a boisterous or uncontrollable way. The children cachinated at the clown's antics. Both words involve expressing amusement. Laugh is the common, everyday term, while cachinnate is more specific and typically used for louder, more excessive laughter. He laughed politely at his boss's pun. The audience cachinated uncontrollably during the comedy show.
Welter is another word for commotion. Commotion refers to a noisy disturbance or confusion, often involving people or events. There was a commotion in the office after the announcement. Welter refers to a state of turmoil or confusion, often involving a mix of chaotic elements. The welter of papers on his desk made it impossible to find the report. Both words describe situations of disorder or confusion. Commotion is often used for noise or activity involving people, while welter can describe any kind of chaotic jumble, whether physical or abstract. The commotion in the crowd made it difficult to hear the speaker. The journalist's draft was a welter of conflicting data and unclear revisions.
Recondite is another word for mysterious. Mysterious refers to something that is difficult to understand or explain, often invoking curiosity or intrigue. The mysterious figure disappeared into the fog. Recondite refers to something that is obscure or known only to a select few. His playlist was full of recondite indie bands that only 2 of his friends had heard of. Both words describe something that is not easily understood or accessible. Mysterious has a broader, more general use for things that are puzzling or hidden, while recondite often implies deep knowledge or complexity that requires expertise. The mysterious season finale left everyone wondering if the character was still alive. In my free time, I enjoy reading recondite texts on ancient philosophy.
Nescience is another word for ignorance. Ignorance refers to a lack of knowledge or awareness about a particular subject. The council member's ignorance about the issue was apparent during the meeting. Nescience refers to a more formal or philosophical lack of knowledge, often implying a profound or absolute state of unawareness. The decisions were driven by nescience rather than malice. Both words describe a lack of knowledge. Ignorance is more commonly used in everyday language, while nescience is often reserved for academic and other formal contexts. The manager's ignorance about the new office rules led to a mix-up with the schedule. The debate exposed the candidate's nescience on foreign policy issues.
Extirpate is another word for uproot. To uproot means to pull something out from its source or position, typically referring to plants or long-established things. The gardener uprooted the rose bush in their yard. To extirpate means to completely remove or destroy something, often with a sense of thoroughness or permanence. The pest control team worked to extirpate the invasive species from the area. Both words describe removal. Uproot can be used for literal or figurative removal, while extirpate is often used to describe complete elimination. The tornado uprooted several big trees in the park. The researchers aimed to extirpate the harmful bacteria from the environment.
Quondam is another word for former. Former refers to something or someone that previously held a certain role, title, or position. The former CEO visited the office yesterday. Quondam means former, but it carries a more nostalgic, literary, or old-fashioned tone. The Quondam King's castle now lay in ruins. Both words describe something that existed in the past, but no longer holds the same status. Former is more commonly used in everyday speech, while Quondam has a formal or literary feel. A former colleague of mine has stayed in touch with me over the years. The quantum hero faded into obscurity.
Dichotomy is another word for difference. Difference refers to a point or factor by which things are not the same, a distinction between two things that can be subtle or distinct. There was not much difference between the original movie and its remake. Dichotomy refers to a division or contrast between two completely opposite or contradictory things. The dichotomy between good and evil is a common theme in literature. Both words highlight distinctions. Difference can refer to any degree of contrast, while dichotomy implies an either-or, often mutually exclusive, division between contradictory things. The difference in paint color was noticeable. The dichotomy between the two political parties is stark.
Limn is another word for draw. To draw means to create an image, outline, or sketch, typically by making marks on a surface. My daughter loves to draw pictures of cats in her sketchbook. To limn also refers to the act of depicting something visually, but it carries a more elevated or poetic tone, often used in literary or artistic descriptions. The artist limned the beautiful sunset with great care. Both words involve the act of creating an image or representation. Draw is widely used for both artistic and casual contexts, while limn has a more refined or lyrical usage, especially when describing vivid scenes or emotions. The preschooler drew a picture of his family. With delicate strokes, she limned the dancer mid-leap, capturing both the motion and music behind it.
Liverish is another word for crabby. Crabby means irritable or bad-tempered, often in a momentary or casual sense. I was in a crabby mood after a long day at the office. Liverish refers to a state of irritability, often used to describe someone feeling unwell or out of sorts. The mom felt liverish as she chased her toddler around the house while she battled a stubborn cold. Both words describe a grouchy demeanor. Crabby can refer to minor irritability or being moody, while liverish tends to imply a more physical irritability, perhaps related to illness or indigestion. He was crabby from staying up too late the night before. We felt liverish after a rich dinner and dessert.
Rectitude is another word for morality. Morality refers to the principles concerning right and wrong behavior, often shared by society. Society's morality often shifts as new generations bring different values and perspectives. Rectitude refers to moral correctness, uprightness, or strict adherence to ethical principles. The judge was admired for her rectitude in making decisions. Both words describe adherence to moral principles. Morality can be discussed broadly or in societal contexts, while rectitude often implies a stricter, more personal sense of ethical uprightness. Her sense of morality taught her to always tell the truth. His rectitude in public service was widely respected.
Postulate is another word for guess. To guess means to form an opinion or make an assumption without sufficient evidence. I guessed on a few test questions, I just wasn't sure of the answers. To postulate means to assume or assert the existence or truth of something as a basis for reasoning, often in scientific or philosophical contexts. The scientist postulated that the universe was infinite. Both words involve forming an idea without full proof. Guess is more common in everyday situations, while postulate is used in more academic or speculative contexts. He guessed the price of the car. The theory postulates that life exists on other planets.
Something described as convoluted is very complicated and difficult to understand, or has many curves and turns. The speaker's argument was so convoluted that most of the audience had trouble determining whether they were for or against the new policy. The route from the airport to the village was long and convoluted.
A ziggurat is an ancient Mesopotamian temple consisting of a pyramidal structure built in successive stages with outside staircases and a shrine at the top. The word ziggurat is also sometimes used for a similarly shaped structure. Ancient ziggurats were always built with a core of mud brick and an exterior covered with baked brick. They had no internal chambers and were usually square or rectangular. Excavations of the site have revealed a great ziggurat.
To sleuth is to carefully or methodically search for information or to act as a detective. We spent hours at the flea market sleuthing for 19th century paintings. There's nothing you can do but sleuth around until you find the answer.
Risible is a formal word used disapprovingly to describe things that deserve to be mocked or laughed at because they are absurd or unreasonable. Although the teachers derided the students' slang as risible nonsense, the same had been said about their own generation's lingo. She's been making risible attempts to learn the trumpet.
Plethora refers to a very large amount or number of something. Plethora is most often used in the phrase a plethora of. The hotel offers a plethora of amenities, including indoor and outdoor pools, a fitness center, and world-class dining. The plethora of regulations is both contradictory and confusing.
To exculpate someone is to prove that they are not guilty of doing something wrong. The editorial expresses confidence that the evidence will exculpate the accused. The defendant was able to exculpate himself from liability.
Bumptious describes people who are rudely and often noisily confident or overassertive. It can also be applied to actions or behaviors that show the same attitude. Our host apologized for the bumptious party guest who caused a scene before being asked to leave.
Modicum is a formal word that means a small amount. It is almost always used with of. The band enjoyed a modicum of success in the early 2010s before becoming an international sensation. Anyone with a modicum of common sense could have seen that the plan wouldn't work.
To gloss a word or phrase is to provide its meaning, or in other words, to explain or define it. Many unfamiliar terms are glossed in the book's introduction. Difficult expressions are explained in the glosses at the bottom of the page.
Uncanny is typically used to describe something that is strange or unusual in a way that is surprising or difficult to understand. It can also describe something that seems to have a supernatural character or origin. The child has an uncanny ability to recognize streets and locations she's seen only once or twice before. The lights suddenly flickered, and we were both overcome with an eerie, uncanny feeling.
Darling can refer to a dearly loved person or to someone who is liked very much by a person or group. It can also mean a kind and helpful person, as in, be a darling and carry this inside for me, would you? Our baby grandchild is just the sweetest little darling. The actor has become a darling of the entertainment industry in both film and music.
Something that festers becomes worse as time passes. Fester can also mean, in the context of wounds, sores, etc., to become painful and infected. We should deal with these problems now instead of allowing them to fester. If you don't take the splinter out, it will fester.
Something described as apotropaic is designed or intended to avert evil. The etchings are believed to be associated with ancient apotropaic rituals. The wall of the cave was covered in apotropaic marks.
Scuttlebutt refers to rumor or gossip, in other words, talk or stories about someone or something that may not be true. According to the scuttlebutt in the financial markets, the company will be downsizing soon. Have you heard any scuttlebutt about the new boss?
Impervious describes that which does not allow something such as water or light to enter or pass through. It is also used formally to mean not bothered or affected by something. Both senses of impervious are usually used with to. The material is impervious to water. The mayor seems impervious to criticism.
If you move crabwise, you move sideways or carefully and not directly. In the storage unit, they moved crabwise between teetering towers of cardboard boxes. He scooted his chair crabwise to get a better view of the screen.
Junket refers to a trip that is paid for by someone else, such as a promotional trip made at another's expense, or an official's trip made at public expense. The cast of the widely acclaimed movie is making press junkets to major cities. The senator is off on another junket to Hawaii at taxpayers' expense. A decorative object made of metal and with a handle, used for holding a cup for hot drinks. The waiter brought out steaming espresso in a silver zarf. She spotted the dusty copper zarf in the antique shop and made an impulse buy.
If two or more things coalesce, they come or grow together to form one thing or system. Protesters began to coalesce around a shared set of demands. Several neighborhood associations decided to coalesce into a single-tenant union.
Mercurial is usually used to describe someone whose mood changes quickly and unpredictably. It can also describe something that changes frequently, such as weather, or something that is lively and quick, such as someone's wit. The director had some concerns about working with the play's lead, an actor with a reputation for having a mercurial temperament on set. Advertising is a mercurial business.
Of or relating to the making of myths, causing, producing, or giving rise to myths.
His poetry had a mythopoeic quality, stitching together new legends from everyday life. Critics praised the game's mythopoeic world-building as groundbreaking and immersive.
A talisman is an object such as a ring or stone that is believed to have magic powers and to cause good things to happen to the person who has it. In ancient times, the gemstone was worn as a talisman to ward off evil. Those rings, so fresh and gleaming, were their talismans.
A person who is extremely neat about their surroundings or appearance. The meticulously curated Instagram grid was designed by hand-picked neatniks. The new roommate turned out to be a total neatnik, labeling every shelf in the fridge.
Antithetical typically describes something that is in direct and unambiguous opposition to another thing. It is often used with to. The district's new policy is fundamentally antithetical to the school's values. Birth and death are antithetical.
To explain away, often used with over. The intern tried to gloze over the missed deadline with a flimsy excuse about traffic. The company attempted to gloze the scandal with a speech about resilience and learning.
Chagrin refers to a feeling of frustration or annoyance caused by failure or disappointment. I decided to take a gap year to the chagrin of my parents. To her chagrin, neither of her sons became doctors.
Something small, delicate, and exquisitely made. She opened the small box to find a bijou depicting a lion, cradled in satin lining. A tiny bijou caught his eye from the corner of the antique shop's display case.
Hapless means having no luck. It's a synonym of unfortunate. The documentary follows a hapless victim of false allegations. Often the hapless victims have no warning that the flood is on its way.
Resembling a monster, malformed or abnormal. The goggles gave his eyes a comical, teratoid largeness, like that of a bug or a puppet. The newly discovered microorganism was described as teratoid for its bulging, asymmetrical shape.
Someone may be described as voluble if they are talking a lot in a rapid, energetic way. Bree knew something was bothering her normally voluble friend when he was reluctant to talk about his day. Evelyn was very voluble on the subject of women's rights.
Edify somebody to improve people's minds or characters by teaching them about something. The fables about trickster animals were meant to edify people rather than simply entertain them. The gallery was curated to edify visitors who came with an open mind.
A bastion is a place or system in which something such as an idea is protected and continues to survive. The restaurant is a bastion of the region's ancient culinary traditions. British public schools are regarded as one of the last bastions of upper-class privilege.
Fawning or excessively flattering. Their nathonic laughter filled the boardroom every time the CEO cracked a joke. There's something suspicious about a nathonic review that calls every dish at the new restaurant life-changing.
Lim is a formal verb most often used especially in literary contexts to mean to describe or portray. As in a novel that limbs the life of 1930s coastal Louisiana. It can also mean to outline in clear sharp detail, as in a tree limned by moonlight, and to draw or paint on a surface, as in limbing a portrait. The documentary limbs the community's decades-long transformation. We admired every detail of the portrait, gracefully limbed by the artist's brush.
A hot spring in which water intermittently boils, sending a tall column of water and steam into the air. Like clockwork, the geyser released a boiling plume of steam every hour. The earliest accounts of the phenomenon claimed the geyser basin smelled like sulfur and sounded like thunder.
Dyspeptic is a formal and old-fashioned word used to describe someone who is bad-tempered, in other words, easily annoyed or angered, or something that shows or is characteristic of a bad temper. The noun form of dyspeptic is dyspepsia. The comedian's shtick of delivering dyspeptic rants on the daily annoyances of modern life was enormously popular.
Before the present time, formerly. Erst the heart of the city's jazz scene, the street is now filled with retail chains. The factory floor, erst full of noise and life, now stood silent beneath a thick layer of dust.
Something, such as a plaque, statue, or parade, is said to commemorate an event, person, etc. when it serves as a memorial. It exists or is done in order to recall the event or person. A person or group commemorates an event, person, etc. by doing something special in order to remember and honor that event or person. The plaque commemorates the battle that took place here 200 years ago. Each year on this date we commemorate our ancestors with a special ceremony.
A midday or afternoon rest or nap, especially as taken in Spain and Latin America. A gentle breeze and a shaded bench made for the perfect impromptu siesta. After lunch, the whole village seemed to vanish into a collective siesta.
Interminable describes things that have or seem to have no end, especially because they continue for a very long time. The family played games to pass the time during the interminable wait for their delayed flight. We got bogged down in interminable discussions.
To wink or blink, of certain animals to close the nictating membrane. The horse nictated briefly after the fly buzzed near its eye. Owls barely nictate compared to many other birds, so their gaze feels watchful and wise.
A fiasco is a complete failure or disaster. The entire fiasco could have been avoided if they'd simply followed the instructions. The show was a fiasco, one actor forgot his lines and another fell off the stage.
Changing frequently, especially as regards one's loyalties, interests, or affection. The weather here is notoriously fickle, swinging from sunshine to storms in minutes. Her biggest worry wasn't impressing the hiring manager. It was whether her fickle internet connection would hold up long enough to finish the interview.
Nascent is a formal word used to describe something that is just beginning to exist, or in other words, is recently formed or developed. The actress is now focused on her nascent singing career. Everyone in this nascent business is still struggling with basic issues.
A fingerprint. The only evidence left behind was a lone dactylogram smudged across the shattered window pane. He compared the dactylogram to dozens of archived prints, searching for a match.
Gust refers to a sudden strong wind. It is also used figuratively for a sudden outburst of something, such as a feeling. Today's weather will be windy, with gusts of up to 40 miles per hour. She could hear gusts of laughter from within the room.
To cheat or swindle. The startup tried to hornswoggle investors with a product that barely worked. By the time I realized I had been hornswoggled, the grifter was long gone with my cash.
Opportune describes something that is suitable or convenient for a particular situation, or that is done or happening at an appropriate time. They chose an opportune time to invest in real estate. She is waiting for an opportune moment to ask for a raise.